Bertha Russell is not used to losing, but in the Season 3 Episode 7 trailer, something shifts, and for the first time we see her pleading with Marian. Yes, pleading. Not commanding, not scheming, begging. The woman who strong-armed her way into New York society is now cornered, vulnerable, and possibly desperate. The question is, why? And what does Marian have that Bertha wants so badly? This trailer dropped more than just hints. It threw open the doors to betrayal, heartbreak, and one very dangerous game of social survival. Let's start with the heart of this trailer, Bertha. This entire season has tested her like never before, but Episode 7 seems to be the point where everything breaks. In the trailer, we see her standing alone in the conservatory, a rare shot that strips her of grandeur. Gone are the servants, the spectacle, the power plays. What's left is a woman rattled. Her voice, usually crisp and commanding, is softer now when she says to Marian, "I need your help, please." Just 2 lines, but they hit like a brick wall. For a character like Bertha, vulnerability is a foreign language. And for her to speak it? That means the stakes are unimaginably high. So what's going on? At the end of Episode 6, George's business empire was crumbling, Larry's engagement collapsed, and Bertha's influence at the opera was slipping. Now in the trailer, we hear George say, "We've weathered storms before. This isn't one we walk away from." That's ominous. Add to that Marian's sudden prominence in the social scene and the pieces start to click. Bertha, stripped of her usual leverage, is realizing that if she wants to salvage her family's place in society, and maybe even her son's happiness, she needs Marian, not as a pawn, but as an ally. Now here's the twist. Marian doesn't respond immediately. She stares at Bertha with confusion, maybe even suspicion. After all, their relationship has never been equal. Marian has always been cautious around the Russells, especially after witnessing their manipulation up close. And now that she holds real power, thanks to her ties with the Wintertons and the board of the Metropolitan Opera, it's Bertha who's on the outside. There's a brief but telling moment in the trailer. Marian walking past Bertha on the staircase, not even looking back. That isn't just editing flair. That's a power shift in motion. But while Bertha may be begging, don't count her out just yet. This is still the woman who took on New York's most rigid institutions and came out swinging. The question is, what's her endgame? Is this a genuine plea, or another carefully crafted manipulation? Because let's not forget, Bertha doesn't beg without a plan. Meanwhile, her relationship with George is starting to show cracks. In the trailer, there's a scene where they sit in silence at the dining table. No dialogue, just distance. The collapse of George's railroad deal has pushed him into a defensive corner, and for a man so used to controlling outcomes, that's dangerous. Remember his comment in Episode 6? "I should have had Clay killed. That wasn't just rage, it was a warning. George is capable of going darker than we've seen before, and now, with everything unraveling, we might finally see just how far he's willing to go to protect the empire he built." That brings us to Larry. The golden boy of the Russell family is still reeling from Marian's letter. In the trailer, he confronts his mother directly. "Did you have something to do with this?" And for once, Bertha looks shaken. Not angry, not insulted, genuinely shaken. Could this be the moment she realizes her ambition has finally cost her too much? Larry, meanwhile, is spiraling. He's back in New York, but not at home. There's a scene of him standing outside Marian's apartment in the rain, not knocking, just waiting. A broken man with nowhere to put the pieces, but what's most chilling is what we don't see. No Jack, no Oscar, no Gladys in the trailer, just the bare threads of chaos woven tightly around Marian and Bertha. That's not an oversight. That's focus. This episode is going to pit 2 women against the world. One who's trying to rebuild her life in her own quiet way, and the other who's realizing she might have destroyed hers. And if Bertha's desperation is real, if this isn't a performance, then for the first time in the Gilded Age, the question isn't whether Bertha will win. It's whether she can survive. While Bertha's desperation takes center stage, the quiet implosion of George Russell's business empire rumbles beneath the surface, and it's about to get loud. In the episode 7 trailer, George is seen walking through his brokerage office, eyes fixed forward, jaw clenched, surrounded by whispers and stares. The camera lingers on the backs of brokers, some of whom turn away the moment he enters. This isn't just embarrassment, this is exile. What we know from episode 6 is that George's acquisition of the Illinois Central line went sideways after Clay, his former secretary, likely leaked damaging information to the press. The Merrick brothers, once eager sellers, panicked. Investors pulled out. Now, George is radioactive in a room full of fire, and the trailer doubles down on that. We hear him say, "If we're not careful, they'll bury us before we can fight back." This is George Russell acknowledging, for maybe the first time, that brute force and cash won't solve everything. But who's really pulling the strings behind this sabotage? That's where it gets dangerous. There's brief mention of Mr. Sage again, and if Clay really has aligned with him, then this is more than just betrayal. It's strategy. George isn't just up against bad press or skittish bankers. He's up against a coordinated effort to destroy the Russell brand from the inside out. And in the business world of the Gilded Age, destruction means more than bankruptcy. It means disgrace, humiliation, and total social death. Bertha knows it too. In the trailer, there's a sharp cut to her snapping at Turner. "We do not fall! Not now!" The look in her eyes isn't fear, it's defiance. But as we saw with her confrontation with Marian, defiance only works when you still have cards to play. And it's unclear whether the Russells have any left. Now shift your focus to Peggy. While the Russells battle for survival, Peggy's facing a much more personal kind of war. In the trailer, we see her at a suffrage meeting, standing beside Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Yes, a real historical figure, and a powerful one. This signals that Peggy's political arc is about to get a serious upgrade. But activism isn't the only thing on her mind. William, her new love interest, remains charming and supportive, but the cracks are forming. Peggy still hasn't told him about her past, the lost child, the marriage annulled in secrecy, the grief buried so deep she barely speaks of it even to herself. In one fleeting moment from the trailer, William says to her, "You can trust me, Peggy," to which she says nothing. That silence, deafening. Then comes the confrontation with Elizabeth, William's mother. It's happening, and it's going to be brutal. In the trailer, Elizabeth bursts into the newsroom where Peggy is working and slams a folded document onto the desk. Her voice cuts like a blade. "You think this changes who you are?" There's no doubt. Elizabeth has uncovered Peggy's past. Whether it's the annulled marriage certificate or something else, the truth is no longer hidden. And the moment we feared might come? It's here. What makes this so devastating isn't just Elizabeth's cruelty, it's what it could do to Peggy's career. Her role as a journalist, her voice in the suffrage movement, even her growing influence among Black activists. This scandal could threaten all of it. Not because she did anything wrong, but because in a society ruled by reputation, truth is weaponized. There's a second, more subtle moment in the trailer. A blink, and you'll miss it shot of Peggy standing alone in the dark, looking out a window, visibly shaken. Not crying, not screaming, just absorbing the storm. And that's the power of her character. While others explode, Peggy endures. But for how long? Because William might love her. But how strong is that love when it's tested against shame, scandal, and a mother who sees Peggy as nothing more than a threat to their legacy? Now let's not forget the looming grief that's about to swallow the entire cast. John Adams. The trailer confirms what episode 6 hinted. He's dead. Hit by a carriage. The finality of it is confirmed with a gut punch of a shot. Oscar standing at the edge of a grave, alone, holding a single white flower. No words, just loss. And this changes everything. Oscar, who has spent the last 2 seasons chasing fortune and acceptance, just lost the only person who truly saw him. John's death may seem accidental, but the trailer raises unsettling questions. The carriage didn't stop. No witnesses stepped forward. Was it just a tragic accident, Or something more sinister? Could it have been tied to John's inheritance? And why, in one very chilling shot, is Oscar holding what looks like a sealed will with John's initials? If John left everything to Oscar, that changes the stakes completely. Oscar has always been a character in search of identity, managing his queerness, his ambition, his shame. With John gone and a possible fortune in hand, he may finally be in a position to break free of societal chains. But wealth doesn't fix grief, and the trailer shows us a man both liberated and lost. What's heartbreaking is that no one else seems to notice. Everyone's focused on opera wars, business failures, and social positioning. Meanwhile, Oscar is quietly mourning the only person who ever made him feel safe. So what does he do now? Fade into the background? Re-enter the marriage market with renewed determination? Or walk away from it all? Episode 7 is setting up more than just drama. It's setting up consequences. And not just for Oscar or Peggy or George. For everyone. And if the trailer is any indication, nobody's walking away clean. While all eyes are on Bertha's breakdown and George's crumbling empire, something quietly powerful is unfolding. Gladys is stepping into the spotlight. And not as her mother's accessory, not as the obedient daughter desperate for approval, but as a woman who's finally ready to make decisions, her decisions. In the trailer for episode 7, there's a moment that speaks volumes. Gladys, dressed in rich dark velvet, is seated beside the Duke, calmly addressing a group of social elites. No nervous glances, no tugging at gloves, just controlled elegance. That scene alone tells us everything. She's no longer in the background. She's leading the conversation. And it's not just for show. This is political. Let's not forget what happened back in episode 6. Bertha caught Lady Sarah demeaning Gladys, and instead of brushing it off, she used it as ammunition to reframe her daughter's public image. But the real transformation wasn't orchestrated by Bertha, it came from within Gladys herself. When she stood up to Lady Sarah, defended her place beside the Duke, and rejected outdated expectations, she did what her mother never could, earned respect by commanding it. Now, in the trailer, the Duke appears even more invested. In one scene, he places a hand lightly on Gladys's back as she walks into a gala. It's a public gesture, a claim, almost. And while it could mean support, it could also mean scrutiny, because the more visible Gladys becomes, the more enemies she's likely to attract. Especially those still loyal to the old guard of society who see her, and by extension Bertha, as imposters. There's another moment that raises eyebrows, a heated conversation between the Duke and another man outside a horse-drawn carriage. No audio, but the expressions are clear. Tension, accusation, frustration. Is someone questioning Gladys's intentions? Is the Duke being warned? Or is he beginning to realize the Russell name might be more of a liability than an asset? Now on to Marian. If you think she's just a background character in all of this, think again. The trailer reveals a Marian we haven't seen before, confident, poised, and entirely in control of her surroundings. One scene shows her addressing a small circle of well-dressed women, likely at a luncheon or strategy meeting. The look on her face? Calm determination. This is a Marian who isn't just reacting to society. She's shaping it. And it's not just about power. It's about intention. After calling off her engagement with Larry, Marian has made it clear. She won't be manipulated by love, family, or status. And now that Bertha is seeking her out, the dynamic has flipped completely. Marian has become the woman people need, not the other way around. But this rise in influence comes with a price. There's a voiceover in the trailer, possibly Agnes, saying, "Be careful who you trust. They remember everything." That's a warning if we've ever heard one, because Marian's alliances are changing and someone isn't happy about it. Could it be the Wintertons? The opera war that Bertha ignited is still raging, and Marian, caught between both sides, may soon be forced to choose. There's even a brief shot of her sitting beside Mrs. Winterton at the opera house, both of them smiling, but the smiles don't reach their eyes. This could be the most dangerous alliance yet. And then there's that single, haunting line Marian says in the trailer. Sometimes the cost of silence is too high. We don't know who she's talking to. Maybe it's Bertha, maybe it's Agnes, maybe it's herself. But it signals something major. Marian is done sitting quietly. That brings us to the most curious thread of all, the growing closeness between Agnes and Oscar. Yes, you read that right. In a blink and you'll miss it moment from the trailer, Agnes is seen inviting Oscar into her drawing room for tea. What begins as a polite exchange takes a strange turn when Oscar leans in and says, "I think you and I understand each other more than they know." Agnes, stone-faced, gives the smallest nod. Now, this could be nothing, or it could be everything. Because Oscar, grieving and wounded, might be looking for protection in the only place left that still values propriety and discretion. And Agnes? She's no fool. She sees opportunity where others see ruin. With her niece rising in society and the Russells unraveling, aligning with Oscar might serve her more than anyone realizes, especially if John Adams left Oscar a sizable inheritance, which would instantly elevate his financial standing. That makes him not just a social wild card, but a potential kingmaker. And Agnes, despite her disdain for social climbers, has always understood power. As alliances shift and new bonds form, Episode 7 is shaping up to be less about scandal and more about strategy. Every character is making moves, not just to survive, but to rise. And in a world where reputation is everything, the ones who stay quiet for too long may be the first to fall. Episode 7 isn't just another stepping stone toward the finale, it is the reckoning. This is where every whisper becomes a confrontation, every side glance turns into a dagger, and every secret becomes impossible to hide. And from the looks of the trailer, this episode will push each character to a breaking point, not with explosions, but with precision cuts that leave lasting scars. Let's talk about the opera war, because the battle that began in velvet-draped ballrooms has now entered its most dangerous phase. The trailer flashes images of both opera houses preparing for major events on the same night. 2 carriages arrive, 2 doors swing open, 2 orchestras tune up, and behind both events, Bertha Russell and Mrs. Winterton locked in an invisible tug-of-war. But here's the catch. Bertha might finally be outplayed. In one devastating line, Turner whispers to a fellow maid, "She doesn't know what's coming." It's not clear who Turner's referring to, Bertha, Mrs. Winterton, or even someone else, but the tone is sharp and knowing. This is Turner back in full manipulation mode, sliding between households like a ghost, and possibly orchestrating a quiet betrayal behind the scenes. If she's working with the Wintertons now, it could explain how they've started out maneuvering Bertha socially, and how Marian may be caught in the crossfire. Because remember, Marian is now attending events on both sides. That's dangerous. In the world of Gilded Age society, neutrality is a myth. And in one uncomfortable scene from the trailer, Bertha confronts her. "You can't serve 2 queens, Marian. Choose." It's not just a challenge, it's a threat. And that's when Marian finally says the words we've been waiting for. "Then maybe I'll be my own." That line alone signals the final evolution of Marian Brooke. No longer hiding behind her aunt's judgment, no longer tiptoeing through society's rules, she's choosing to stand alone. And in a world built on alliances, that may be the most radical move of all. Meanwhile, in the darkest corner of the story, we find Oscar, alone in his townhouse, reading the last letter John Adams ever wrote to him. No words are read aloud, but we see Oscar's eyes begin to water as he folds the letter slowly, methodically, and locks it away in a drawer. There's something symbolic in that action. Oscar's pain, his identity, his chance at genuine love, all locked away again. But it doesn't end there. A lawyer arrives. In a low voice, he tells Oscar, "The will was contested. There's going to be a hearing." And suddenly, Oscar's grief transforms into fury. Not just because of the money, but because of what the challenge implies. That his relationship with John was invalid, shameful, unworthy of legal recognition. Oscar has lived his entire life under the weight of silence, and now, even in death, that silence threatens to erase the only truth he ever embraced. Don't be surprised if Episode 7 marks the beginning of Oscar's long overdue rebellion, not just against society, but against himself. Because grief has a way of waking people up, and when Oscar wakes, he may become the most dangerous man in New York. Back at the Van Ryn house, things aren't quiet either. Agnes has always operated in the background, but something changes in this episode. In the trailer, she's seen sitting alone in her study, a letter opener in hand, and a torn envelope in front of her. Her face? Pale. Her voice? Barely above a whisper. So it's true then. We don't know what the letter says, but the implications are chilling. Could it be confirmation of Bertha's manipulation, evidence against Oscar? Or something darker, something involving Marian? Agnes has always clung to tradition, but the cracks are showing. And whatever was in that envelope has shaken her foundations. This might be the moment where Agnes finally realizes that the world she fought to preserve is already gone, and that she may have played a part in its destruction. As the trailer reaches its final beats, the music swells, and we're shown a flurry of moments. Peggy, standing on stage beside Frances Harper, delivering a speech with fire in her eyes and conviction in her voice. George Russell, seated alone in a smoky boardroom, surrounded by empty chairs, murmuring, "I built all of this, and I'll tear it down if I must." Bertha, seated in a pew at a near-empty opera rehearsal, holding Marian's hand briefly, then letting it go. Marian, walking alone through Central Park in the early morning, as the sun rises behind her. No bonnet. No gloves. Just clarity. And then, the final line. Bertha's voice, off-screen, low and shaken. "If I lose everything, I'll still find a way to win." That's not a statement. It's a warning. Episode 7 is no longer just about scandal or status. It's about survival. And every character is facing a choice: evolve or be erased.